It started with the sound of metal screaming against the rain. A crash so loud it cut through the city noise and through me, right down to the bone. I was closing up the diner when it happened. Midnight. The streets outside looked like they'd been dipped in oil, wet, gleaming, and dangerous. Neon from the liquor store sign flickered across the window, throwing red and blue ghosts over the counter. Then came the screech, the slam, the unmistakable shatter of glass. Tires spinning. A child's cry, faint, terrified, carried through the storm. I didn't think. I just ran. My shoes splashed through puddles as I crossed the street, heart pounding so loud I couldn't tell if the thunder was real or in my chest. The air smelled like gasoline and wet asphalt. Steam hissed from a crumpled black SUV that had smashed into a lamppost. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks, headlights flickering like dying eyes. And there, in the back seat, I saw her. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, small hands pressed against the window, tears streaking her face. "Hey, sweetheart, don't move," I yelled, fumbling with the door handle. It was jammed. The front seat was a horror show. A man slumped over the wheel, blood on his shirt, another in the passenger seat not moving at all. The girl sobbed. "My daddy, please." "It's okay," I told her, even though nothing about this was okay. "I'm going to get you out." I grabbed a tire iron from the ground, smashed the glass, and reached in. Glass sliced my arm, but I didn't care. I unbuckled her seatbelt, pulled her out into the rain. She clung to me instantly, trembling, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Sirens were still distant, too far. Someone shouted behind me, male, rough voice. "Put the kid down." I turned and saw 2 men running toward us through the rain. Dark suits, guns in their hands. Not cops. Not paramedics. I froze. The child screamed and buried her face in my chest. "Back off!" I shouted, tightening my grip around her. One of them raised his weapon, but the other barked, "Don't shoot! That's her!" "Her?" The man slowed, eyes wide under the streetlight. "You just saved the boss's kid." I didn't understand what that meant until I saw the tattoos curling out from his collar. A black serpent, inked thick and dark. I'd seen it before. On the news, on wanted posters. The Moretti family. My blood turned to ice. "Give her to me," the man said, voice lower now, urgent. "We need to get her to the hospital." I hesitated. The girl's fingers dug into me like claws. "Don't let them take me," she sobbed. That was the moment, the kind where time slows down and your whole life tilts on one impossible choice. Sirens got closer. The man growled, "Lady, if you don't hand her over, this is going to get messy." And that's when gunfire ripped through the night. Bullets shattered the windshield, sparks flying. I hit the ground, covering the girl with my body. The men shouted. One fell, clutching his shoulder, the other dragged him toward the SUV. Somewhere in the chaos, a black car pulled up fast, tires screaming against the wet concrete. Doors flew open. More men, suits, rifles, all moving with terrifying precision. One shouted into a phone, "We found her! Get the boss!" The boss. I didn't wait to see what that meant. I ran, the girl in my arms, the city blurring around us in streaks of rain and smoke. The hospital lights felt too bright, too sterile, too quiet after what I'd just run from. They took the girl from me, rushed her into emergency. I followed as far as they'd let me, blood still dripping from my arm. A nurse stopped me. "Ma'am, you can't—" "She was in the crash," I said, voice cracking. "Please, just tell me she'll be okay." The nurse softened. "She's in good hands. You should sit down. You're bleeding." I looked down, glass cuts, bruises, a streak of blood running down my wrist. My hands shook, so I sat in the hallway, surrounded by the hum of machines and the faint smell of disinfectant. My uniform was soaked, hair plastered to my face. I must have replayed it 100 times. The crash, the men, the gunfire, that girl's eyes. The clock ticked slow, every minute dragging. Then a shadow moved in the corner of my vision. 2 men in black coats stood at the far end of the hall. Not hospital staff, not police either. They watched me, and something about the way they didn't move made my stomach twist. A doctor walked by, whispering to a nurse, "She's stable, but we can't reach any family." That word, family, made me glance up again. But the men were gone. It was almost 2 in the morning when I decided to leave. The nurse gave me a towel for my arm and told me to go home. Rest. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city looked washed clean, like nothing bad had ever happened. I was halfway to the bus stop when a black SUV rolled up beside me. Tinted windows, engine idling. My heart started hammering again. The back window lowered, slow, deliberate. And that's when I saw him. He looked nothing like I expected. No flashy jewelry, no arrogance. Just a man in a dark suit, rain still glistening on his shoulders. His face was sharp, the kind that could silence a room without saying a word. His eyes met mine, and for a second I forgot to breathe. He didn't look angry or grateful, just haunted. "You pulled my daughter out of that car," he said quietly. His voice was low, gravelly, dangerous and beautiful at the same time. I swallowed hard. "She's alive. That's what matters." He studied me, gaze unmoving. "You shouldn't have been there." "I work at the diner across the street," I said. "I heard the crash." He nodded slowly, then looked away, like he was trying to rein ice in something. "Get in," he said finally. "What?" "You're bleeding. You need to get checked properly. I'll take you." I stepped back. "No, thank you. I'm fine." He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. "You're not fine. And it's not safe out here." Something about the way he said it, calm, final, made the air around us tighten. "I can handle myself," I said, even though my voice trembled. A faint smile touched his mouth. Not amusement, more like disbelief. "You have no idea what you just stepped into." "Then maybe you should tell me." For a moment, the city noise faded. The world shrank to just the sound of rain dripping from the streetlight, and his eyes on me, cold, dark, and unreadable. He finally said, "Get in the car, miss." "Ava," I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded once. "Ava." The way he said my name sounded like a test. "You saved my little girl tonight. That means something." "Good," I said softly. "Then let her have a normal life." He looked away, jaw tightening. "For people like us, there's no such thing." The car door opened from inside. One of his men stepped out, waiting. Every instinct told me to walk away. But something in me, maybe the same part that made me run into fire for a stranger's child, made me take one small step forward. He noticed, and something shifted in his expression. "Careful," he said quietly. "Once you cross this line, there's no going back." I stopped. I just wanted to help. "And you did," he said, voice soft now. "But saving her means you're part of this now, whether you like it or not." My breath caught. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expression darkening. Then his gaze met mine again, colder this time. "Go home, Ava. Forget tonight ever happened." The car door closed. The SUV rolled away, its taillights fading into the mist. I stood there, rain starting again, heart still racing. Forget tonight? Impossible. Because the look in his eyes, the way he said my name, had already burned itself into my memory. And deep down, I knew that wasn't the last time I'd see him. Not even close. The first thing I heard was the rain. Not the gentle kind. The kind that feels like the city's washing something ugly off its skin. It drummed against my window, steady and cold, and for a second I didn't remember where I was. My sheets were tangled around me, the alarm clock flashing 7:42 a.m. in red light. My heart was already racing, like it hadn't stopped since last night. For half a breath, I convinced myself it had been a nightmare. The crash, the blood, the child's voice begging me not to let go. Maybe it was just exhaustion. I worked late, saw something I shouldn't have, imagined the rest. But then I saw my arm, the thin white bandage the nurse had wrapped around the cuts. And I remembered. The rain. The men. The voice in the black SUV. You saved my little girl, but that means you're part of this now. I sat up fast, pressing my palms to my face. My whole apartment smelled like damp coffee grounds and detergent. My uniform hung on the chair where I'd thrown it, still stained with rain and someone else's blood. The logical thing to do would have been to call the police. But what would I even say? Hi, I think I saved a mobster's daughter last night, and now I can't sleep. They'd laugh. Or worse, they'd start asking questions I didn't have answers to. So I did what I always do when I don't know what else to do. I got dressed, poured coffee, and went to work. The diner looked exactly the same as it had the night before. Chrome counter, flickering sign, smell of burnt toast and cheap soap. But somehow, everything felt different. Like the walls were listening. Rough night? My co-worker Lena asked as she tied her apron. Something like that. She looked me over, raising an eyebrow. You look like you saw a ghost. Just didn't sleep, I said, forcing a smile. Coffee'll fix it. It didn't. Every time the doorbell chimed, I flinched. Every passing car outside sounded like that black SUV. My eyes kept drifting to the window, expecting to see him. That man with the quiet voice and the impossible eyes. I told myself he was gone. That people like him didn't think twice about waitresses who just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. But around noon, I realized I was wrong. The first man came in with a newspaper tucked under his arm. Business suit, polished shoes, didn't look at the menu. Sat at the corner booth, the one where the light never reached. The second came 10 minutes later. Leather jacket, sunglasses, ordered coffee, and didn't drink it. I tried not to stare, but they weren't exactly hiding. They were waiting. When the door opened again, a third man entered, older, calm, gray at the temples. He wore no tie, no flash, just presence. He didn't sit down. He walked straight to the counter. "Can I help you?" I asked, keeping my voice even. He placed an envelope on the counter. From Mr. Moretti. The name hit like a punch. I didn't touch it. I don't know any Mr. Moretti. He smiled faintly, like he'd heard that before. He said you'd say that, but you might want to open it anyway. Then he turned and walked out. No rush, no words. The other two men followed. The bell above the door jingled softly, and then they were gone. The diner went silent. Even Lena stopped wiping tables. "What was that about?" she whispered. "I don't know." But I did. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Me, standing in the rain, holding the little girl in my arms, taken from across the street. There was nothing else inside, no message, no signature, just proof. Proof that someone had been watching. I didn't make it through the rest of my shift. I told Lena I wasn't feeling well, and she didn't argue. She'd seen my face. She knew something was wrong. Outside, the air smelled like metal again. I pulled my jacket tighter and walked fast, every step echoing too loud. My building was only 5 blocks away, but it felt like a mile. Every car engine made me tense. Every reflection in a store window looked like someone following me. By the time I reached my door, my hands were shaking so hard I dropped my keys twice. The moment I got inside, I locked every bolt, every chain. Then I sat at the table, staring at that photograph. I'd saved a life, a child's life. That was supposed to be a good thing. The kind of thing you could be proud of. But this wasn't a world where good deeds stayed clean. I thought about the way that man, Moretti, had looked at me. Not like a stranger, like someone he'd already decided to remember. And that terrified me more than anything. It was around 9 p.m. when I heard it. A knock, 3 soft taps. My whole body froze. Nobody came to my apartment at night. Nobody. I stayed silent, hoping they'd leave, but after a moment, a familiar voice cut through the door. Ava! My stomach dropped. I opened it slowly. He was standing there, rain dripping from his coat, eyes darker than I remembered. 2 of his men flanked the hallway behind him, silent, motionless. Can I come in? He asked quietly. You already found my home, I said. Seems like you can do whatever you want. He studied me for a long moment, then stepped inside. His presence filled the small apartment instantly, too large for the space, too quiet to be safe. I told you to forget about last night, he said. I tried. And yet, here we are. I crossed my arms, trying to keep my voice steady. Why send people to my job? Why the photo? He looked at me, expression unreadable. That wasn't me. Then who was it? His jaw tightened. Someone who knows what happened. Someone who shouldn't. I swallowed. You mean someone from your world? He didn't answer, but silence said enough. I don't want any part of this, I whispered. I was just trying to help. His gaze softened, barely. You saved my daughter, Ava. That's not something I can forget. He took a slow step closer. I could smell rain and smoke on his coat, something sharp and clean beneath it. She's stable, he said quietly. Doctors say she'll make a full recovery. Relief rushed through me so fast my knees almost gave out. Thank God. Something flickered in his eyes, a quick, pained smile that didn't reach them. You believe in God? I believe in doing the right thing, I said. Even when it's not easy. He looked down for a moment, almost like the words had cut deeper than they should have. Then his voice dropped lower. You shouldn't have been there, Ava. I know, I said softly. But if I hadn't been, she'd be... Don't. He cut me off, voice sharp. Don't say it. Silence stretched between us, thick, charged. Then he exhaled and turned away, rubbing a hand over his jaw. You've been watched since last night. Someone saw you pull her from that car. They took that photo. They know your face. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. What do they want? To hurt me, he said simply. And they'll use you to do it. I shook my head, heart thudding. I don't understand. I don't even know you. He turned back to me, close now, too close. You know enough. Enough that they'll assume you're important. I'm not. You are now. The words landed like a warning and a promise at once. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. His eyes locked on mine, steady, searching. I saw exhaustion there, and something else. Guilt. Or maybe gratitude he didn't know how to show. Why tell me this? I asked quietly. You could have just disappeared. Because you saved the only thing I care about, he said. And that means I owe you. I forced a shaky laugh. You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone would have done. He shook his head. No, most people would have run. For a second, the silence between us felt like static, thick, electric. Then he looked past me toward the rain streaking down the window. You need to stay somewhere safe. My men will watch your building. No, I said quickly. I don't want anyone watching me. That's not up for debate. I don't want your protection. He stepped closer, just enough to make me feel the danger in his calm. You already have it. Our eyes met again, and the tension that hung there was unbearable. Part fear, part something else I didn't dare name. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, cursed under his breath, and looked back at me. They found the men who took that photo, he said. But there's something worse. What? They weren't my people. He took one step toward the door, then paused. When he turned back, his gaze held me still. Someone knows you were there last night, Ava. His voice dropped to a whisper that felt like thunder. And that makes you a target. The door closed behind him, leaving only silence and rain. I stood there staring at the empty space where he'd been, the echo of his warning still ringing in my ears. Somewhere deep down, I knew he was right. And for the first time, I realized that saving that little girl hadn't ended a tragedy. It had started one. I didn't see him for 3 days after that night in the diner. 3 days of pretending everything was normal, pouring coffee, wiping counters, smiling at customers who didn't look close enough to see the fear hiding behind my eyes. But every time the bell above the door rang, my pulse jumped. Every dark car idling too long across the street made my throat tighten. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was just leftover adrenaline, but deep down, I knew. Men like him didn't disappear. They watched, and I could feel it, the weight of eyes I couldn't see. It started small. The same silver car parked outside the diner every night, just far enough to blend in. A different man in the driver's seat each time, but always the same stillness, like they were made of patience and gunpowder. Then, one evening as I was closing, I noticed a folded napkin on the counter. No one had sat there. I opened it, a single word written in black ink. Careful. No signature. I looked up, heart thudding against my ribs, but the diner was empty. Just the sound of the neon sign buzzing above the window and the rain tapping on the glass. The same rain that had started everything. That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove aimlessly through the city, past the hospital, the alleys, the quiet bridges, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. But the reflection in my rearview mirror told another story. A black SUV followed me. Not close, not fast, just steady. When I turned down a different street, it turned too. When I slowed, it slowed. I pulled into a crowded gas station, hands trembling as I filled my tank. The SUV rolled past, its windows tinted too dark to see inside. I told myself I was fine, that I'd imagined it. But when I got home, a single rose waited on my doorstep, its stem wrapped in black ribbon. No note, no sound, just the echo of my own breathing. Sleep didn't come easy. Every creak in the apartment made me jump. I kept the lights low, the curtains closed, my phone on silent. My thoughts tangled in loops. What did they want? Was it him? Or someone else? Part of me wanted to believe it was the Mafia boss, maybe checking on me, keeping me safe. But the other part, the smarter part, whispered that men like him didn't protect without purpose. I had something now, something that connected me to his world, the kind of connection people disappeared for. The next morning, I found another note slipped under my door. Don't talk to anyone, they're watching. No handwriting this time, typed, cold, precise, and at the bottom, an address. I stared at it for a long time, the kind of long that makes time stretch until it hurts. I should have called the police. I should have thrown it away. But instead, I went. The address led to a quiet industrial block by the river. Empty warehouses, flickering streetlights, and the faint smell of diesel and rust. My footsteps echoed too loud on the cracked pavement as I approached a metal door marked with faded letters. R. Russo Imports. His name. I almost turned around, but before I could, the door opened from inside, and there he was. Dante Russo. He looked different in daylight, less myth, more man. His suit was black, tailored, but there was something tired in his eyes, like sleep hadn't touched him in days. Ava. His voice was steady, low, the kind of voice that didn't ask, it decided. You shouldn't have come alone. I didn't really have a choice, I said, holding up the note. You sent this, didn't you? He shook his head. No, but I'm glad you came. That should have scared me more than it did. Inside, the place was cleaner than I expected. No smoke, no shouting, no chaos. Just order. A desk, a few men in dark clothes, and the faint hum of music somewhere in the distance. He led me through a hallway and into a smaller room. There was a photograph on the table, me, at the diner, from 2 nights ago. My stomach dropped. Where did you get this? It was sent to me, he said quietly, with a message. I waited. If you can't protect your own, maybe she shouldn't have. His gaze met mine then, sharp, dangerous, but laced with something else. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. I think someone saw you that night, he continued. Someone who wants to make an example of it. Because I saved your daughter? I whispered. Because you touched my world, he said. And no one touches it without a price. The silence that followed pressed against my chest. I could feel the air thinning. I didn't ask for this, I said, voice breaking slightly. I know. Then why won't it stop? He stepped closer, and for a second his face softened, the hard lines around his eyes easing into something almost human. Because once you save someone in my world, he said, you become part of it, whether you want to or not. His words sank deep, slow like poison. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to run, to tell him I wanted nothing to do with any of this. But the way he looked at me, the quiet sincerity buried under all that danger, stopped me. How's your daughter? I asked finally. He paused, and for a moment the mask slipped. She's stable, he said softly. Thanks to you. Our eyes met, and the room seemed to still. She keeps asking for the woman who held her, he added, the one who didn't let her die. The words hit harder than I expected. I'd never been anyone's hero, not once in my life. He stepped closer again, his voice dropping to a whisper. You shouldn't go back to your apartment tonight. Why? Because whoever sent that photo, they're not bluffing. My throat tightened. You think they'll come for me? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. "I can protect you," he said instead. "But you have to let me." It was an offer I didn't know how to refuse, not because I trusted him, but because I didn't trust anyone else. His world was dangerous, but it was clear. Mine was just falling apart. He handed me a small black phone. "If anything happens, call this number. Don't use your regular phone again." I took it, my fingers brushing against his, a small electric contact that felt heavier than it should have. "What happens if I say no?" I asked. He looked at me like he already knew I wouldn't. "Then you'll be alone in a war you don't understand." The door opened behind him, one of his men stepping in. "Boss, they hit one of our warehouses. Looks like a message." Dante's eyes didn't leave mine. "It's already begun," he said quietly. And just like that, I realized I wasn't a bystander anymore. I was collateral. That night, I didn't go home. I drove to the river, parked beneath the old bridge, and watched the water shimmer with city lights. My hands still smelled like coffee and fear. I kept replaying his voice in my head, the warning, the strange calmness beneath it. "Someone knows you were there." And for the first time since that night, I finally understood what that meant. It wasn't just danger. It was a promise. A door I'd already walked through, and there was no going back. By the time the sun rose the next morning, I hadn't slept a single minute. The city outside my window felt different, quieter, sharper. Like the world had tilted slightly in the night, and everything ordinary had slipped out of reach. I sat at my kitchen table, nursing a cold cup of coffee and staring at the black phone he'd given me. It looked harmless, almost cheap, but I could feel the weight of what it meant, a line straight into his world. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Another part, the part that still remembered his eyes when he said, "I can protect you," kept it close. When I finally left the apartment, the air smelled like rain again. The streets were wet, reflecting gray clouds and half-faded neon. I pulled my coat tight and walked to the diner like it was any other day, even though every step felt watched. Inside, things looked normal. Same hum of the fridge, same flickering sign. But when I reached the counter, there was already a man sitting there, tall, clean-cut, wearing a gray suit that didn't fit the usual trucker crowd. He smiled too easily. "Ava, right?" The sound of my name made me freeze. "I don't think we've met." He nodded toward the coffee machine. "Mind pouring me a cup? I heard you make it better than anyone else in the city." His tone was casual, too casual. I poured the coffee anyway, trying to steady my breathing. "Who told you that?" He sipped it before answering. "A friend. Said you were at the wrong place last week. Rough night, huh?" My heart stopped. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You did a brave thing, but bravery can be dangerous when it's seen by the wrong people." "What do you want?" I asked quietly. He smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "To help you stay alive." Before I could respond, the diner door opened, the bell jingling like it was part of the tension. 2 of Dante's men walked in. I recognized one of them, the same driver from the night of the shootout. The man in the suit looked at them, then at me. His smile vanished. "Guess we'll talk later." He stood, left cash on the counter, and walked out the back door like he'd never been there. One of Dante's men stepped forward. "Boss wants to see you." "I'm working," I said automatically, though my voice didn't sound convincing. "He said now." They didn't take me to the warehouse this time. They took me to a house, large, modern, quiet, the kind of place with too many windows and not enough life inside. When I walked in, the air smelled like rain and cigar smoke. And there he was again, Dante Russo, standing by the fireplace, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, a storm in human form. "You shouldn't have talked to him," he said without looking up. "I didn't have a choice. He found me." He turned then, eyes burning into mine. "Everyone has a choice, Ava. You just don't know how to make the safe one." I wanted to be angry, but fear got there first. Who was he? He walked toward me slow, deliberate. His name's Callum Price. Used to work for me. Now he works for the people who want me gone. "And me?" His jaw tightened. "Your leverage." The word hit like a slap. "I didn't ask to be part of this," I said. "I know," he replied softly. "But saving my daughter made you family to them, whether you wanted it or not." Family. The way he said it sounded like a sentence, not a comfort. I looked around the room, the marble, the silence, the faint hum of expensive isolation. "You live like a man who doesn't sleep." "I don't," he said. The honesty in that simple answer disarmed me. He poured himself a drink, then another for me, sliding the glass across the table. "You want the truth?" he asked. "About what?" "About who I am, and what you stepped into." I hesitated, then nodded. He took a slow sip, watching the firelight dance across the glass. "I built this city's underworld from nothing. Every port, every deal, every name that matters. They came through me. I didn't choose this life. It chose me when I was too young to understand the cost." "And your daughter?" His gaze softened, the first real crack in his armor. "She's the only good thing I've ever done. The only thing I can't afford to lose." "Then why drag me into this?" "Because you saved her," he said, voice low. "And that makes you a weakness they can exploit." The words lingered between us like smoke. A weakness. I didn't know if it was an accusation or a confession. He looked down, then set his glass aside. "I have men watching your apartment, your route to work, even the hospital you used to visit. But it won't be enough if Price decides to move." I swallowed hard. "What does he want?" "Me. Dead. And you, as proof that no one is untouchable." For a moment the room felt like it was tilting, the air heavy with something unspoken. "Then what happens now?" I whispered. He stepped closer, his voice almost gentle. "Now you stay here, until it's safe." "I can't just disappear," I said. "I have a job, a life." He cut me off with a look. "You had one. This is survival now." Silence settled, the kind that hums louder than sound. He stood just inches from me, the fire behind him casting shadows that blurred the edges of his face. "You think I like this? Dragging you into my mess?" "I don't know what you like," I said quietly. His eyes lingered on me, too long, too carefully. "You remind me of someone," he said finally. "Someone who believed people could still be saved." "And what happened to her?" He hesitated. "She stopped believing." The words landed heavy, final. Hours passed in that house, though they didn't feel like hours. The windows darkened, the fire burned low, and I found myself sitting across from him, two strangers linked by one impossible night. He told me about the men hunting him, about how Price had been more than an enemy. He'd been a brother once. The betrayal still cut deep. I could see it in the way his jaw clenched when he said the name. And somewhere between the threats and the silence, I saw the truth beneath his power, the loneliness that lived in him, the kind that no wealth or control could silence. Maybe that's why I didn't leave when I could. Later, as I stood near the window, I caught his reflection beside mine. "You should rest," he said. "I can't." He nodded slowly. "Neither can I." We stayed like that for a while, two sleepless souls trapped in the same war. And then, without warning, the lights flickered. A split second later, a gunshot shattered the glass beside us. He grabbed me before I even realized what was happening, pulling me to the floor, shielding me with his body as more shots tore through the room. His men stormed in, shouting orders, returning fire. The air filled with chaos, glass, smoke, adrenaline. When it was over, the silence was deafening. Dante lifted his head, checking me for blood. "You're okay?" I nodded, breathless. "You?" He shook his head. "Not me. Not tonight." But there was a look in his eyes I hadn't seen before, something fierce and personal. "They found us," he said softly. "And this time, they weren't aiming for me." That's when I realized the truth. This wasn't just about revenge or power anymore. Whoever wanted him gone didn't just want to break his empire. They wanted to break him. And I had become the perfect way to do it. I didn't remember how long I sat on that cold marble floor, the smell of gunpowder still heavy in the air. Someone was shouting orders in another room. Men were sweeping the hall with weapons drawn, and broken glass glittered around us like frost. But all I could focus on was him. Dante Russo, still crouched beside me, his hand wrapped tight around my wrist like he wasn't sure if I was real. It wasn't fear I saw in his eyes. It was something sharper, darker, the kind of protectiveness that comes from losing too much. "You should have stayed in the safe room," one of his men said. Dante didn't even look up. "If she dies, I burn this city down." Those words hit harder than the gunfire. He stood, finally letting me go, his knuckles bleeding where he'd shattered the glass table earlier. "Get her out of here," he ordered. "Now!" But I grabbed his arm before they could move me. "I'm not running again." He turned to me, the veins in his neck tense. "You think this is a game, Ava? You were one bullet away from dying in my house. My house." "I didn't ask to be in your house," I shot back. "You brought me here. You made me part of this." The room fell quiet. Even his men hesitated. And for the first time, he didn't have a comeback. Just silence that felt too heavy to stand in. We left through a side entrance, me in one of his men's jackets, hood up, adrenaline still humming through my veins. They drove me to a different location this time. Not the city, not the mansion. A cabin somewhere out near the edge of the woods, where the skyline disappeared behind trees and fog. Inside, everything smelled of pine and cigarette smoke. There was a small fireplace, a single bed, and a sense of quiet that didn't feel safe, just temporary. When I asked where he was, the man who drove said, "He'll come later, when it's clear." But hours passed, and the night grew longer, and I realized I was waiting for something I couldn't name. At some point, I must have drifted into a half-sleep, because when I opened my eyes, the fire had burned low. And he was there. Dante stood near the doorway, his suit gone, his shirt sleeves rolled, his gun still holstered. He looked like someone who'd been through hell, but refused to admit it. "You didn't knock," I said quietly. "You weren't supposed to be awake." I wasn't supposed to be here either. He gave a faint smirk at that, but it didn't reach his eyes. He walked closer, stopped just a few feet away. "They'll keep trying. Price doesn't give up. Not when he smells blood. So, I'm bait now, I said. No. He shook his head slowly. You're the reason I'm still breathing. I looked at him, really looked. The lines at the corners of his eyes, the exhaustion beneath the power. That's supposed to make me feel better? It's not supposed to make you feel anything. We stood, there in silence, the fire flickering low between us. I could feel the weight of everything unsaid, the danger, the guilt, the strange current that kept pulling us toward each other no matter how wrong it was. Finally, I broke it. What happened to her? Your daughter. His jaw tightened, but he answered. She's safe. My men moved her this morning. She's asking for you. The words caught me off guard. Me? She remembers your face. Keeps asking if the nurse with the brown eyes is coming back. Something in my chest cracked at that. I didn't know what to say. She doesn't know who I am to her, he said, his voice lowering. For her own protection. She thinks I'm someone else. The world doesn't get to touch her. He looked at me then, long, unblinking, and I saw something raw there. Not love, not yet, but maybe the memory of it. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you're already in it, he said simply. And I don't like pretending otherwise. I turned away, letting the silence stretch again. Outside the rain had started, soft at first, then steady. The sound of it against the roof filled the spaces where our words couldn't reach. When he finally spoke again, his tone had changed, softer, but no less dangerous. You think I don't see it? The way you look at me? Like you're trying to find the man underneath all this. My heart skipped. And what if I am? Then you're wasting your time. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his warmth even from across the small room. There's nothing underneath, Ava. There's just what's left. For a moment I believed him, but then his eyes softened again, not by choice, just by instinct, and I realized he was lying. Not to me, but to himself. Later, he sat by the fire, staring into the flames like they were speaking to him. I stayed quiet, sitting across the room, watching his reflection move in the glass of the window. You ever regret it? I asked finally. All of it? He didn't look at me when he answered. Every day. But regret doesn't change what's already burned. Something about the way he said it, the calm, the resignation, broke the space between us. I moved closer before I even realized I had. He looked up, eyes catching mine. For a second, everything stilled. No rain, no noise, no rules. Just that strange gravity pulling us closer. But he stopped himself first. Stood. Stepped back. You should sleep, he said quietly. We move at dawn. Move where? To end this. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat awake, listening to the rain fade and the first light creep through the window. I thought about what he'd said, about being leverage, being bait, being a weakness. And for the first time, I realized he wasn't wrong. Somewhere between the bullets and the silence, I'd started caring about a man I was supposed to fear. When he came back in the morning, his expression was different, focused, unreadable, the kind of calm before a war. He dropped a folder onto the table in front of me. This is him, Callum Price, every place he's touched in the last 3 months. I opened it, photos, names, coordinates. But then, tucked between the papers, was something else. A surveillance still. It was me, at the diner. He's been watching you since the night you saved her, Dante said. And now he's making his move. I felt the color drain from my face. What does he want? Dante looked at me, a long, cold stare that felt like both a warning and a promise. You. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he stepped forward close enough that I could smell the faint trace of his cologne beneath the smoke. I can keep you safe, he said. But you need to understand something, Ava. This, he gestured between us. Whatever this is, it doesn't end clean. Once you're in my world, you don't get to walk away untouched. I met his gaze, steady now. Then maybe I'm already in it. Something flickered behind his eyes. Surprise, maybe even respect. But instead of answering, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small silver chain. It was broken at the clasp, and at the end of it hung a tiny charm, a cross, dented and bloodstained. She was wearing this, he said quietly. The woman who used to believe I could be saved. He pressed it into my palm. His skin was warm against mine. Don't make her mistake. Then he turned and walked out into the rain. I stood there, the chain clutched in my hand, the echo of his words cutting deeper than the night before. Because I knew what he meant. And I also knew I was already too far gone to listen. By the time the sun rose over the tree line, the cabin was already cold again. Dante had left before dawn, leaving behind only the faint smell of smoke, gun oil, and something else, something I couldn't name. I told myself I'd get used to it, the silence, the uncertainty, the way every sound outside made my body tense. But the truth was simpler. I missed him the moment he was gone. I made coffee that tasted like ash and waited for the sound of engines that never came. Every few minutes, I found myself glancing at the door, half hoping, half dreading it would open again. It didn't. Hours passed. The forest outside stayed quiet, like it was holding its breath. Then, around noon, my phone, the burner he'd given me, buzzed once. Just a message. Stay inside. Don't talk to anyone. No signature, but I didn't need one. It was his voice, even in text form, precise, restrained, commanding. I should have listened. But something in me, the same part that ran into a gunfight to save a stranger's child, refused to just sit and wait for fate to knock. So when I saw the flash of headlights down the dirt road an hour later, I didn't hide. I watched. A black SUV slowed near the gate, idled for a moment, then backed up and disappeared. And just like that, my pulse turned to ice. By nightfall, I was pacing the floor. The burner stayed silent. I tried calling, once, twice, straight to voicemail. It wasn't until the third ring that a different voice answered. Rough, male, not Dante. Who is this? I asked, trying to steady my breath. The man chuckled. Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. Where's Dante? A pause, then a low laugh. You mean Mr. Russo? Busy, but he'll call when he's done cleaning up his mess. And before I could respond, click. The line went dead. I didn't realize I was shaking until the mug in my hand slipped and shattered against the floor. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. I grabbed the small pistol he'd left on the counter and backed toward the window. Outside, darkness, stillness. Then a flicker of movement. Someone was standing just beyond the trees. I froze. The figure didn't move closer, just watched. The wind pushed through the branches, and for a second I swore I saw a reflection. Binoculars. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. And then, headlights. Not from the trees, but the other side. A car roaring up the dirt road. For one insane moment, I thought it was him. But when the door opened, it wasn't Dante. It was Marco, the one with the scar above his eyebrow, the one who'd driven me here the first night. He was bleeding. "Get in," he barked. "Marco, what? Now, Ava?" I didn't argue. The ride down the forest road was chaos, tires sliding on mud, branches snapping against the windshield. "Where is he?" I demanded. "Trapped downtown," Marco said, gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles were white. "Price hit the docks. Took out 2 of our shipments. Dante went in to contain it, but they knew he'd show." I swallowed hard. "You think it's a setup?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The city lights came into view through the rain, a smear of gold and red through the fog. My hands trembled as I loaded the pistol. I didn't even know what I planned to do with it. "Drop me close," I said. "I can help." He glanced at me like I'd just confessed to suicide. "You're not going near that place." "Marco." He slammed the brakes, the car skidding to a stop on the side of the road. "You don't get it. He'd kill me if I let you." "Then you better drive fast," I said, my voice steady now. "Because I'm not staying behind." He stared at me for a long second, then cursed under his breath and hit the gas. The docks were chaos. Fire licking up from a burning car, shadows running between shipping containers, the echo of gunfire bouncing off the metal walls. Marco pulled the car into a dark corner and killed the lights. "Stay here," he said, "if I'm not back in 5. But I was already out of the car. Smoke filled the air, thick with the smell of gasoline and salt. I crouched behind a crate, heart hammering. Voices shouted nearby. One of them, deep, cold, unmistakable. Dante. I followed the sound weaving through the maze of metal until I saw him. He was outnumbered. 3 men closing in, one already down. His shirt was torn, blood staining the side of his arm. But he moved like a machine, precise, ruthless, unstoppable. Then another man stepped out behind him, gun raised. I didn't think. I just acted. The shot echoed before I even realized I'd pulled the trigger. The man fell. Dante spun, gun drawn, eyes wide, until he saw me. "Ava! Behind you!" I screamed. He turned and fired, 2 clean shots. The last man fell. Then silence. Only the rain, soft against the metal and blood. He stared at me for what felt like forever. His face unreadable. His chest rising and falling in heavy breaths. "What the hell are you doing here?" he finally said. I tried to answer, but all I could do was shake my head. "I told you to stay away," he said, stepping closer. "You don't belong in this." "Neither does your daughter," I shot back. "But she's still in it." That stopped him. For a moment something broke in his expression, anger melting into something raw. He closed the distance between us, voice low. "You just painted a target on yourself. You understand that?" "I already had one." We left before the cops showed, disappearing through the back alleys into the night. He didn't speak as he drove, his hands tight in the wheel, jaw clenched hard enough to crack. I watched the city slide by outside the window, lights flickering against puddles, the world spinning fast and dangerous around us. Finally, I said, "You would have died back there." He exhaled slowly, not looking at me. "And you would have been smarter to let me. You think I could live with that?" He didn't answer, just drove faster. When we finally stopped, it wasn't at one of his mansions or safe houses. It was an empty penthouse, high above the city, half renovated, full of shadows. He killed the engine, turned to me, and for the first time all night, really looked at me. I told myself you were just a good person who got caught in something ugly, he said quietly. But good people don't follow killers into a war zone. Then maybe I'm not good. He leaned back, eyes narrowing. No, you're worse. You're like me. The way he said it, soft, certain, sent a chill through me. Because part of me knew he wasn't wrong. Hours later, I sat by the window while he patched the cut on his arm. The rain had slowed, and the skyline glowed like a heartbeat below us. He poured whiskey into 2 glasses, slid one toward me. You shouldn't have come, he said again, quieter now. And yet, I said, raising the glass, here we are. He smiled, a ghost of one. You know what that makes you, right? What? My weakness. He said it like a confession, and I realized it wasn't a compliment. Because in his world, weakness got people killed. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did he. At some point, the city went silent. He stood by the window, staring out at the lights, phone in his hand. Price won't stop, he said finally. Not until he makes me bleed where it hurts most. And where's that? I asked. He turned, his eyes meeting mine, heavy, dark, honest. You. The words landed like a shot, and in that moment I understood exactly what he meant. The city didn't sleep that night, and neither did I. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed, merging with the hum of traffic below. From the penthouse window, I could see it all. The lights, the movement, the pulse of a world that didn't care who lived or died, as long as the streets stayed busy. Dante hadn't said a word for hours. He just stood there, shirt half-buttoned, sleeves rolled, blood still drying along his jawline. The tension in his shoulders could have cracked stone. He'd been on the phone earlier, speaking in a low, clipped Italian I barely understood. But I caught one word, repeated twice. Figlia. His daughter. She was safe, he said. But the way his voice broke on that one word told me it wasn't over. Not even close. When he finally turned toward me, his eyes had softened, but only slightly. You need to leave the city, he said. I didn't even blink. You know I won't. This isn't a choice, Ava. You helped me once. You saved her. That's all you were ever meant to do. Then why did you bring me here? I asked. He didn't answer, not right away. He just stared, like he was searching for the right lie and couldn't find it. Finally, because I couldn't let them find you first. I didn't know who they were until an hour later. The first explosion came from across the river, distant but sharp enough to rattle the windows. Then came the calls. Marco. Nico. One after another. Words like warehouse hit, 2 men down, Price made a move. The war had begun. Dante moved with purpose, gun loaded, jacket on, phone tucked into his pocket. He didn't even look back when he said, "Stay here." Like hell, I said, standing. You think I'm just going to hide while you... He turned sharply, his voice low but dangerous. You don't understand what's coming, Ava. These people don't make threats. They erase witnesses, burn hospitals, kill anyone who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Then let me be right for once, I snapped. You need someone to watch your back. His eyes flickered, part disbelief, part something else. Admiration, maybe. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the smoke still clinging to his jacket. You think you're built for this? He murmured. I didn't think I was built to save a child from a gunfight either, I said. But here we are. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The storm outside had faded to mist, and the city below felt suspended, like everything had paused, waiting for one of us to make a move. Finally, he exhaled, slow and reluctant. "Stay close to me, and when I tell you to run, you run. No questions." I nodded, and just like that, I was in his world. We drove through the city in silence, the roads slick with rain and neon reflection. Dante's men followed in 2 cars behind, their silhouettes sharp, eyes hidden behind tinted glass. The closer we got to the river, the heavier the air felt, like the city itself knew what was about to happen. When we stopped, it wasn't at a safe house or a meeting point. It was a church, abandoned, half-burned, but still standing. Dante pushed open the heavy doors, the scent of damp wood and old ashes filling the air. Candles flickered faintly along the altar. Someone had been here recently. "Why here?" I whispered. "Because it's where everything started," he said. He walked to the front pew and set down a small box. Inside, a ring, blackened at the edges. He turned it in his palm like it was a wound that never healed. "When I was 19, he said, I made a promise in this place. Swore I'd never become the kind of man my father was." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Guess I broke that one early." I wanted to say something, to comfort him, maybe, but before I could, the doors creaked behind us. Marco rushed in, gun in hand. "Boss, we have a problem." "What kind?" Dante asked. "The kind that follows your phone signal." The sound of engines cut through the rain outside. Headlights swept across the broken stained glass. In the glow, I could see figures, 10, maybe 12, surrounding the church. Dante didn't flinch. He just handed me a second gun and said quietly, "Stay behind the altar. If you see Price, don't hesitate." I tried to swallow the fear, but my hands betrayed me, trembling, slick with sweat. Then the first shot shattered the silence. Glass exploded, candles went dark, and chaos took over. I don't remember the first few seconds, just noise and light and the smell of gunpowder. Marco went down first, shouting something I couldn't hear. Dante moved fast, returning fire, pulling me deeper behind the marble altar. "You okay?" he shouted. "I think so." He fired again. 2 more bodies dropped. When the shooting paused, I could hear footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Then a voice, calm and familiar, echoed through the hall. "Russo!" "Price." I peeked around the corner. He was tall, mid-40s, dressed like someone who never had to get his hands dirty. His men flanked him like shadows. "You should have stayed out of my way," Price said, his voice carrying. "Now I have to finish what your father started." Dante stood slowly, gun still raised. "You talk too much." The tension was electric, 1 heartbeat away from breaking. Then Dante stepped forward, and I swear the air itself seemed to bend around him. He fired once, Price ducked, fired back. The room erupted again. I crawled to Marco. He was still breathing, barely. "Hold on," I whispered, pressing against the wound in his shoulder. He coughed, smiling weakly. "Boss, told you, don't follow him." "Yeah," I said, voice shaking. "You're both terrible at giving advice." The shooting slowed, then stopped. When I looked up, Dante was standing in front of the altar, gun pointed at Price's head. The rest of Price's men were down. But so was Dante, blood seeping through his shirt, staining the floor. "Dante!" He turned slightly, just enough to meet my eyes. "Stay back." Price smiled, even as he bled from his shoulder. "You think killing me ends it? You don't even know who's pulling the strings anymore." Then, before Dante could react, Price pulled the pin on a grenade. The sound that followed wasn't just an explosion. It was thunder, glass, and the past colliding all at once. When I woke, everything was smoke and ringing ears. My head throbbed, my vision blurred. The church was gone, or what was left of it was unrecognizable. "Dante!" I coughed. "Dante!" Through the haze, I saw movement, a figure dragging himself across the floor. He was alive. Barely. I crawled toward him, ignoring the cuts, the pain. When I reached him, he looked up at me, blood running from his temple, eyes still sharp. "You should have run," he whispered. "I'm not leaving you." He tried to smile, but couldn't. "Ava, there's a safe house north of the city. Go there. Take—" A shadow moved behind him. Before I could scream, a gun pressed against my temple. Price. Half his face was burned, eyes wild. "You took everything from me," he rasped. "Now I'll take her from you." Dante moved before I even realized he could, twisting, firing. One clean shot to Price's chest. The man fell. Hard. Then Dante collapsed too. "Dante!" I caught him as he fell, his blood hot against my hands. He looked up at me, his voice barely a whisper. "You saved her once, then me. Now go, before—" I shook my head, tears blurring everything. "I'm not leaving you. Not again." He reached up, fingers brushing against my cheek, gentle, fleeting. "You don't get to choose your weakness," he murmured. "It chooses you." And then, everything went still. Outside, the rain had started again. Soft, steady, endless. The city's sirens grew louder in the distance, but I didn't move. Not yet. Because in that moment I wasn't sure if I'd lost him, or if I'd just become him. It's strange, the way silence lingers after violence. How the world doesn't stop for your grief. Morning came like it always does, gray and unapologetic, washing the streets clean of the blood it never saw. By the time I pulled myself out of the ruins of the church, the sirens were already near. Blue lights flickered off broken glass, painting the world in guilt and aftermath. Dante lay beside me, barely conscious. His pulse, weak but there, throbbed beneath my fingers like a fragile thread the universe hadn't cut yet. "Stay with me," I whispered, pressing against the wound in his side. "Don't you dare let go now." His eyes opened slightly, cloudy, unfocused, but when they found mine, the corners of his lips trembled into something almost human. "I told you to run," he breathed. "And I told you," I said, voice breaking. "I don't listen to orders." The paramedics didn't ask questions. They didn't have to. "When they took him away, I stayed hidden in the shadows of the crumbling church, watching until the ambulance lights disappeared behind the veil of rain. Because I knew, the moment I stepped into that hospital again, he wouldn't be the only one waiting for me. It took 2 days for me to find out he'd survived, and 1 phone call to realize the rest of the world hadn't. Marco was gone. Nico too. Price's men were scattered, their empire burning from the inside out. But Dante Russo, the man who built kingdoms out of blood and loyalty, was alive. Barely. The newspapers called it a gang war. The cops called it justice. I called it consequence. Still, I couldn't stay away. The hospital looked different this time, quieter, colder. I wore a cap low, a scarf high, pretending I was just another visitor lost in the maze of corridors. But the moment I reached the intensive care wing, 2 men in suits turned toward me. Not cops, not nurses, Dante's men. One of them nodded silently and motioned toward a corner room. No words exchanged, just understanding. When I stepped inside, I froze. He was awake, pale, tired, bandaged, but alive. And when his eyes met mine, something in my chest shifted. the way tectonic plates do before an earthquake. He didn't smile. He didn't have to. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "I've been told that a lot lately," I replied. "Then you're not listening." I took a breath, steadying myself. "I needed to know if you—" He cut me off gently. "Alive?" He exhaled slowly. "You should have let me go, Ava." I stepped closer. "And you should have stopped making me care." The silence that followed was thick, electric, the kind that could kill or heal depending on who spoke next. Finally, he looked away. Price wasn't working alone. The words hung in the air like smoke. "What do you mean?" He turned his head slightly, eyes distant. "Someone inside. Someone who knew about the girl, about you. That night at the hospital wasn't random." A chill crawled up my spine. "So saving her made you part of it," he finished. "And now they'll come for you to tie up loose ends." I wanted to argue, to believe that this nightmare would fade if I ignored it long enough. But deep down, I already knew he was right. "Then what do I do?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "You leave the city. Start over. Forget this ever happened." I almost laughed. "You think I can just forget you?" He didn't answer, but something flickered in his gaze. A fracture. A softness he didn't mean to show. "Don't make me your mistake, Ava," he whispered. "You weren't a mistake," I said. "You were the one thing that made sense." His hand twitched, maybe from pain, maybe from wanting to reach for me. But before either of us could say more, the door opened. One of his men leaned in. "Boss, we have company." Dante's expression hardened instantly. "Go," he said to me. "I'm not leaving you like this." He looked at me with that same calm authority that used to make entire rooms fall silent. "Go," he repeated, voice low. "Please." It was that last word, the softness in it, that made me listen. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. I walked through it with my hood up, heart pounding, every step echoing like guilt. The city felt heavier, like every streetlight was watching me, every shadow waiting to move. When I reached my apartment, the door was already unlocked. Inside, chaos. Drawers pulled out, papers scattered, glass shattered on the floor. And on my kitchen counter, an envelope. No name, just a wax seal. I tore it open with shaking hands. Inside, a single photograph. Me, standing in the hospital hallway that first night. Behind me, blurry but clear enough to recognize, was Dante's little girl. On the back of the photo, scrawled in red ink, "Everyone pays for their debts." My phone buzzed before I could breathe. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. A man's voice, calm, collected. "Miss Monroe, we need to talk." "Who is this?" He chuckled quietly. "Let's just say I represent certain interests, ones you've accidentally interfered with." I swallowed hard. "If you come near him—" "Oh, I think you misunderstand," he said. "We already did." The line went dead. And just like that, the world tilted again. By the time I reached the hospital, it was chaos. Sirens, smoke, security alarms blaring through the corridors. I ran past shouting nurses, down the same hallway where I'd first seen his child's broken body. Only this time, the blood was his. Dante's room was empty. The bed, overturned. The window, shattered. He was gone. I stumbled back, dizzy, gripping the doorframe like the world was spinning too fast. Then I saw it, taped to the heart monitor. A small, folded note. "Don't come for me. They'll follow you. Protect her." Her. His daughter. The room blurred, and I didn't even realize I was crying until the paper soaked through in my hand. The next few weeks passed in fragments, changing motels, fake names, eyes always over my shoulder. I didn't sleep, didn't eat much, just moved. Some nights I'd think I heard his voice, in a radio static, in the rain outside, in my dreams. I told myself he was gone, that no one could survive what they'd done to him. But the world doesn't always give you clean endings. It was late autumn when I saw her again, his daughter, in a park on the edge of the city, laughing, chasing pigeons under the watch of a man in a black coat. For a second I thought I imagined him, but then he turned. Dante. Alive. Different, though, quieter, sharper. The scar on his temple like a warning carved into his skin. He saw me. Didn't move. Didn't smile. Just nodded once, a silent acknowledgement. I wanted to go to him, to ask how. Why? If he remembered the night I ruined everything by saving what I shouldn't have. But his little girl ran to him, and he picked her up, pressing a kiss to her hair. And that told me everything I needed to know. He had chosen his world, and I had to survive mine. Sometimes when I walk past the river, I still hear his voice in my head. Low, rough, protective. You don't get to choose your weakness. It chooses you. Maybe he was right. Maybe saving that child was never fate, just a test of what I was willing to lose. But every night, when the city sleeps and the rain begins again, I whisper one thing to the darkness. Not a prayer, not a goodbye, just a truth. I saved your child, Dante Russo, and somehow, you saved me. The rain kept falling outside, washing the city clean, or trying to. And maybe somewhere out there, in the quiet between sins and second chances, he was still watching, still remembering, just like me. If you felt this story, if it stayed with you after the last word, make sure to like and subscribe. More dark love, more danger, more secrets to uncover. Next on Mara's Betrayal.